What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to College Football Talk with Peter Burtnett. Back with another preview video for the 2025 college football season. I'm starting out my three-part series on the ACC. In this video, I'm going to be going over the teams that I think are kind of in the bottom of the conference that really are fighting for bowl eligibility, and kind of my purpose of this, I guess, is going to be saying whether the teams will be winning more, less, or even to their win total last year, and whether they will be making a bowl. But before I get into it, if you go on to enjoy this video, please feel free to leave a like, consider subscribing to the channel, and turn on those post notifications so you're always up to date whenever I upload. Getting things started, this is going to be basing the projections, at least in the order if I go through these teams, kind of from bottom upward, based on projections by Athlon Sports specifically, but just kind of the general consensus in college football. And that is starting out with Cal. And this might be interesting because the Golden Bears went 6-7 last year, but they suffered some really heavy losses in the offseason. Quarterback Fernando Mendoza is going to Indiana. Running back Jaden Ott is on his way to Oklahoma. And tight end Jack Endries is going to Texas. However, there are some positives for this Cal team that is coming back this year. Devin Brown, or coming into the team, Devin Brown, the quarterback from Ohio State, joins. And they also have a top 15 rushing defense and a plus 11 turnover margin from last year. They're also adding a really good Colorado State running back in Buam Joke from Colorado State again. So that's a good addition on the defensive side of things. This Cal team, I think, certainly still has some potential, but those are some really big losses on the offensive side of the ball, some turnover on the defensive side as well. I think they win less games than they did last year, and I also do not think they make a bowl game this time around. Number 16 is Stanford. The Cardinals are in a really interesting situation. They went 3-9 last year, but coming in is Andrew Luck as the general manager, as the GM for the team, and Frank Reich, a little bit of an Indianapolis Colts-themed addition to Stanford here, as the interim head coach. They also bring in a really talented wide receiver, CJ Williams, who's coming in from Wisconsin. The offense last year was in the bottom quarter of the country in most key metrics, and the defense, outside of rushing, was bottom quarter as well. Fifth. They were actually the fifth worst among Power 4 teams last year. I think, honestly, overall, the long-term outlook is pretty solid for the Cardinals, but I don't think it is for 2025. I think Frank Reich can get things figured out with this team, and maybe they get a win late in the season. I think they probably can beat Cal. I think they finished ahead of them in the standings, but I think Stanford finishes even, maybe +1 in the win total, but either way, that is not enough to get the Cardinal a bowl game. Then coming in at number 15 is Virginia. Again, this is based on projections by Athlon Sports. These aren't necessarily my projections. This is just going over each of these teams in kind of a national perspective, I guess. That's Virginia, 5-7 last year. I actually really like the addition they make at quarterback. North Texas quarterback Chandler Morris is coming in. Also, shout out Danny Kalen coming in from Nebraska. He's a Bellevue West product. I covered his career when he was in high school here in the Omaha area. They also retain both of their starters on the left side of the offensive line. They have some good depth at running back as well. They've got a 6'7 transfer from UNLV, Fisher Kamak, who had 7.5 sacks last year. The secondary is going to need some work. They did pretty poorly against the pass last year, and they ranked near the bottom of the ACC in sacks and interceptions. But I think Morris is going to provide kind of a jolt to that offense. I think this is a team that also has a good amount of room for growth. I think they've got a good football program there. You know, they're not a team that wins a lot of games regularly, but I think they're moving maybe in the right direction. I think Virginia gets 2 more wins this year, and I think that does get them to bowl eligibility. Next up is Wake Forest. The Demon Deacons finished 4-8 last year. They bring in Jack Dickert from Washington State. They also have a good running back who was ranked among the best statistically in the ACC, Demond Claiborne. He rushed for a little over 1,000 yards. He also had 23 receptions and totaled 13 touchdowns. Coming in with Coach Dickert from Washington State is Carlos Hernandez, a talented wide receiver. And they also have the ACC's leading tackler, safety Nick Anderson, coming back. The defense also needs some work. They don't rank very high, really, in many key areas. In fact, they ranked 113th in scoring defense nationally, 126th against the pass, and 117th in total defense. So definitely some room. They did decently well against the rush. They ranked 80th, still not very good. I think they've got a schedule that sets up, especially in the non-conference slate, for getting a few more wins. I think they get one more win than last year, but that doesn't quite get them bowl eligibility. So I think Wake Forest finishes at 5-7, maybe takes a step forward, but overall kind of another tough season for Wake Forest. Coming in number 13 is Boston College. They were 7-6 last year. They have a really tough final stretch coming up this season. It really starts out like week 6, their 5th game of the season at Pitt, then home against Clemson, at Louisville, home against Notre Dame, home against SMU, home against Georgia Tech, and at Syracuse. They got Connecticut in there on October 18th. Other than that, I think all of those games are losable games. I think they probably win, 1 or 2 of those, but and they could have a decent start. What are we looking at here with the Eagles though? They're losing quarterback Tommy Castellanos, transferring to Florida State. More on him in my next video. But they're going to have a quarterback battle on their hands, Grayson James and Dylan Lonergan. And then also a couple wide receivers to keep an eye on, Lewis Bond and Reed Harris. Safety KP Price was a reliable tackler last year, 85 tackles, 2 interceptions. And then Davion Bam Crouch is a solid linebacker there. They were pretty good. They were actually really good against the rush, ranking in the top 25 nationally, and they also had a +9 turnover margin. But last year, I think kind of what happened last year could be pretty similar this year. They got off to a hot start, 4-1. They were looking pretty good. Then they lost 3 in a row, and then lost 2 of their final 5. So, on kind of the sandwich of the season, the beginning and the end, they did pretty well. They were 7-3 in those games, but they had that 3-game losing streak in the middle. I think they could have something similar to that this year, and maybe kind of that continues throughout the end of the season. So I think they probably have 2 fewer wins this year, which means that they are not, in my projections, going to a bowl game. Coming in at number 12 is Virginia Tech. They've got a totally new look on the offensive line. 5 starters, all 5 from last year are gone. A new offensive coordinator, Philip Montgomery, and quarterback Kyron Drones, who struggled with injuries last year but showed a lot of promise when he did play, and then the season before that as well. They're bringing in a running back transfer from Bowling Green, Terrion Stewart. He rushed for almost 900 yards and 6 touchdowns. I think the unit, if I had to kind of grade them on defense, is kind of a B unit, but they're losing 12 players, and I know you're thinking, okay, there's 11 starters, but they have 12 players who either started or had like a heavy amount of snaps from last year. They do have some good defensive linemen, Kelvin Gilliam Jr., Keyshawn Burgos, linebackers Jaden Keller and Caleb Woodson. Those 2 guys combined for 155 tackles. They also had a +8 turnover margin. Virginia Tech over the years has really prided themselves on defense. That has dipped a bit over the years, but they still have, again, what I would call like a B defensive unit. I think they probably stay, just based on their schedule, right even with their 6-7 finish last year. Maybe they get one more win in a bowl game, but considering I'm just projecting the regular season here, I think they get 6 wins, which is enough, obviously, to get to a bowl game. Finally, the final team in this video is North Carolina State. They were 6-7 last year. Quarterback C.J. Bailey posted some pretty good numbers last year. 2,400 passing yards, 17 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 279 rushing yards, and 3 rushing touchdowns. He's got a returning receiver in Noah Rogers and a returning tight end in Justin Jolie. And he's also bringing in C. Jalen Grant from Purdue. Purdue lost a lot in the transfer portal, and that's been to the benefit of a lot of other teams. That includes the Wolfpack here. They also have a couple of returning starters on the left side of the offensive line, which is always important, just continuity overall, but especially on that left side. On defense, linebacker Sean Brown had 96 tackles last year. He's the only one among the top 6 tacklers from last year to be coming back. And they're bringing in a linebacker, defensive end, edge rusher, Trey Thomas from Temple. They also have some good transfers in the secondary coming in. I think also, though, kind of like Virginia Tech, pretty tough schedule. I think if they can get through unscathed, and maybe steal a game here or there, I think they also probably hit that 6-win total again and do get into a bowl game. So kind of a look over what I project these teams finish with. I think Stanford finishes with 3 or 4 wins. I think Cal finishes with 4. I could see those teams being swapped, though, especially if Stanford is able to get the win over Cal. Wake Forest with 5, Boston College with 5 wins, and then NC State and Virginia Tech with 6. And leading this group, many people have them maybe third bottom, but I have them at the top of this group of 7 teams is Virginia. I really like the addition at quarterback. Chandler Morris put up some good numbers at North Texas, so I think that's a really good addition for the Cavaliers. But that's all for this video. Let me know your thoughts on these teams, which ones you think will be able to maybe escape out of this group and emerge among either the dark horses or the contenders. Those will be my next 2 videos, so stay tuned for those. My next one will be going over the dark horses, and then the third video in my ACC preview, I'll be going over the contenders, the favorite, and who I think ultimately comes out on top in the conference. But thank you so much for taking the time to watch College Football Talk. I'm your host, Peter Burnett, signing out. Peace.